Week 5 is done. Let's recap. It was the first week this season with byes, but there was still chaos all across the league. Comeback wins, collapses, and felonies from your fifth favorite color commentator. Try saying that 5 times fast. Let's go through it all with our weekly NFL vibe check, where we rank every NFL team's week. Before we do, this is the first time we've had byes all season. I will not be writing about the teams that had byes this week, but we can still acknowledge them. Do I have to? Alright, fine. Now let's start the countdown. The team that had the worst week this week was a team that only lost by a point. But hang with me here, they are extremely deserving. At number 28, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals had a cozy 21-6 lead going into the fourth quarter at home against arguably the worst team in the league. The Titans then stormed back and scored 16 unanswered points in the most ridiculous way possible, because the Cardinals figuratively and literally dropped the ball. The Cardinals had 3 second half fumbles, approximately none of which were normal. The second of them occurred when the only person to touch Amari DiMercato on his 71-yard rush was the spirit of Deshaun Jackson. The third and final one resulted in a Titans touchdown after they intercepted a pass from Cam Ward. The first one, and by far the funniest one, was when a snap hit Kyler Murray directly in the face. Any quarterback of normal height would have taken a shot to the with that snap. Like I said, this all happened at home against arguably the worst team in the league. The Cardinals could have won, but then they did a hold my beer maneuver and played like they had already chugged it. What an ugly, hysterical loss. At number 27, the Las Vegas Raiders. The only saving grace to Mark Sanchez's Friday night blunder in Indianapolis is that he didn't have to watch his former college head coach get butt by the Colts. On the bright side, I now have a new restaurant to visit when I visit my friends over at the Indianapolis Helium Comedy Club. 40-6 is outrageous. Geno Smith threw 3 picks, and now he has as many interceptions as every AFC East quarterback combined. You'd think that a 16-play, 80-yard drive that takes almost 10 minutes off the clock and results in a field goal would be a morale booster. But no, nobody on this team can have nice things. The Pete Carroll and Geno Smith experiment is not going well. The Raiders' strategy of hiring coaches and players just because they've heard their name before is not going according to plan. The defense fell completely apart in the second and third quarter, as all 40 points that the Colts scored were in those 2 quarters. The Colts scored 6 touchdowns, while the Raiders had a punt blocked, a missed field goal, a turnover on downs, 2 picks, and a punt go the regular way. The second of 6 touchdowns Indy scored came on a blocked punt, which really doesn't feel like that big of a deal anymore. Their punter, AJ Cole, even suffered an ankle injury, which is what happens when your team punts the entire week. Brock Bowers couldn't even play due to a knee injury, meaning he was too hurt to continue his sophomore slump. This season has been a disaster. At number 26, the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers are going to win the AFC North by default, aren't they? The Ravens are bad right now, really bad. Their QB1 is hurt. Their RB1 may finally be becoming a shell of his former self. The defense is hurt and about as bad as it gets. On Sunday, the Ravens lost 44-10, and John Harbaugh was mercilessly booed as he walked off the field. Cooper Rush had such a rough game, it changed the Edgar Allan quote to, "Quoth the Raven, never score." The fact that the Texans didn't have to worry about Lamar means they were able to game plan around stopping Derrick Henry, and boy was that successful. He totaled a whopping 33 yards, which is less than half of what Amari DiMercato got on a play that resulted in a fumble. Their whole team was pissed, and rightfully so. This is the worst I've ever seen the Ravens look, and I don't think I've ever seen them be a legitimately bad team. Vibes are not good in Baltimore right now, and there might need to be a serious overhaul. Want to check in on the other Harbaugh? Let's! At number 25, the LA Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's system has pretty much fallen completely apart. Justin Herbert took 4 sacks, and Omarion Hampton is now on IR 2 weeks after Najee Harris tore his Achilles. It's Kamani Vidal season, motherfucker. Now it's the Justin Herbert show where he has to be a pocket passer behind an offensive line that makes Jim Harbaugh want to go out there himself and play guard. The Chargers did start hot as they ended the first quarter with a 10-0 lead, but Washington scored 27 unanswered the rest of the way home. They went from having that 10-0 lead in the first quarter to having to play Trey Lance in garbage time. The penalties were what really did this team in, though. Ladd McConkey had a punt return touchdown that was negated by a penalty. That penalty was, of course, the fact that it wasn't blocked because it's 2025 and you're supposed to make contact with the punt. Hampton's injury wasn't the only one, though, as there were 2 hand injuries in the trenches. Neither player returned, probably because they saw that joke coming and wanted to allow me to show the world how brilliant it was. Everyone thought Justin Herbert was unstoppable ever since he started dating his new girlfriend, but to me, she's just a spotted cow. What? Spotted Cow is a really popular Madison beer. At number 24, the New York Jets. Congratulations! The New York Jets stand alone. They are now the only winless team in the NFL, and they also remain the only team in the NFL this year that has yet to force a turnover. The Cowboys blew up the Jets defense, allowing Dak Prescott to rip them for 237 yards and 4 touchdowns on only 18 completions. The Jets had some opportunities to score, but they jetsed it up. Breece Hall fumbled deep in Cowboys territory. They gave up 114 yards to Ryan Flournoy, who I'm not convinced is a real person, and Justin Fields was sacked 5 times. It's not a coincidence that the Jets play in MetLife Stadium, as every Jets game feels like life smacks you in the face. I think that joke makes sense. The Jets are now 0-5 for the first time in their franchise's history, and I'm genuinely shocked by that fact. Give Garrett Wilson the ball on every play, you idiots. And speaking of teams who kind of had fun in garbage time, at number 23, the Cincinnati Bengals. This is why we can't have nice things. This game was the second game in a row where the Bengals started out with a 28-3 deficit. Yes, I did wear a paper bag during the game, and no, I probably wouldn't do it again. The Bengals never stood a chance. Jake Browning threw some of the most gimme interceptions I've ever seen through 2 eye holes in a paper bag. The offensive line stunk again. They allowed a passing touchdown to David Montgomery. The first 3 quarters went about as dreadfully as I could have expected them to go. But like the Jets, they got frisky in garbage time. Jake Browning took all the boos personally and threw 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, 2 to Jamar Chase and 1 to T. Higgins. For a fan base that badly wanted Jameis Winston, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 picks is the most Jameis Winston-ass stat line I've ever seen in my life. In the time being, though, the Bengals really need to trade for an offensive lineman to upgrade. Oh, come on! At number 22, the New York Giants. The G-Men had a brutal 8-week schedule to begin their 2025 season, and this was supposed to be the one gimme game. Like the Cardinals, they too had 3 fumbles. One of them resulted in an 86-yard touchdown. As if the 4th quarter couldn't start any worse, Jackson Dart got absolutely ice cold. He should have refreshed with an ice cold Gatorade, but instead he found Kool-Aid twice. That incredible defensive line, they managed a mere 1 quarterback hit on Spencer Rattler. No sacks either. Just a miserable time when you score early in the 2nd quarter and turn into a disappearing act the rest of the way. The Giants have a tough schedule coming up with the Eagles, Broncos, and Eagles. And Darius Slayton is now joining Malik Neighbors in the doctor's office. Brian Daboll's last-ditch effort to make Jackson Dart his guy is going okay, but the turnovers need to decrease. He's a football guy to his core. He deserves this job. At number 21, the Philadelphia Eagles. Someone isn't a legitimate Super Bowl contender just because they're undefeated and coming off a Super Bowl win. Maybe they are, but hang with me. The offense has truly been inefficient, and they seem to get their identity based on how AJ Brown is tweeting at that time. No matter how bad the referees are, if you're up 17-3 in the 4th quarter and you only have 2 rushing attempts in the entire second half, that's not good clock management. They didn't even trail until midway through the 4th quarter when the Broncos scored on their final 3 possessions. Devontae Smith was the primary beneficiary of Jalen Hurts' passes, and AJ Brown was the primary beneficiary of troll tweets. They are undefeated no more, but it never really felt like they truly were. At number 20, the Kansas City Chiefs. Bucks. A tale of two quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence fell twice and scored the game-winning touchdown. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes fell 0 times and threw a 99-yard pick six to a linebacker. This was a big loss for the Chiefs, who had a major opportunity to gain ground in the AFC West. The Chargers' offensive line became string cheese, the Raiders got destroyed like Mark Sanchez's career, and the Broncos were mid until the Eagles kindly shrugged their shoulders and walked away in the fourth quarter. But seriously, if the game is on the line and your $30 million defensive tackle is going for 2 balls instead of 1, what are you even doing? It did not help that Harrison Butker's fourth quarter kickoff was more errant and out of place than his wife's desire to have a job. Get it together, Kansas City. You're 2-3. Or don't. I'm actually cool with this. At number 19, the Buffalo Bills. Talk about a Funday night matchup. This was a close loss for the Bills, but it was a critical one. It does not help when the first half featured 2 fumbles and 3 times as many penalties as points scored. Funny enough, Keon Coleman was held out of the first drive for disciplinary reasons and thanked his coach by fumbling on the first play of the third drive. The second half was much better, but Josh Allen threw a brutal pick in the Patriots' red zone. The Patriots then drove the ball 90 yards down the field and reminded the Bills of old times by giving Stephon Diggs the ball a bunch, but pissing him off when they let a player that wasn't Stephon Diggs score the touchdown. Diggs absolutely gashed the Bills secondary with 149 yards and 150 chance of I'm still him to Bills Mafia. And Andres Borregales kicked a game-winning 52-yard field goal. Losing at home in the division is rough, but losing to your former star receiver and giving him an opportunity to insert Cardi B joke here is even rougher. At number 18, the Miami Dolphins. This game was like someone throwing a match onto Mike McDaniel's hot seat. They were up 17-0 in the second quarter, but they spent the rest of the game completely forgetting how to play football. It does not help when their QB1 has the memory span of a hummingbird. Rico Dowdle bludgeoned the Dolphins' rushing defense with 206 yards, 201 of which came after the Dolphins were up 17-0. How did the Dolphins rushing offense do? 19 total yards, 57 feet. If their rushing offense was a catcher, they couldn't even make it all the way to the pitcher's mound for a pitcher's visit. Tua Tagovailoa was efficient, mainly because he didn't have to overhear people in the crowd begging for Tyreek Hill to send them child support payments. Jalen Waddle topped the century mark, and Darren Waller continued his rebound even though he was not targeted in the second half. Waller had 5 touches in the first half. But you know who touched the ball 5 times in the second half? The punter. The collapse in the second half is symbolic of their collapse of their season, and it's tough to know if this regime will last much longer. At number 17, the LA Rams. It was a close loss, but it was a loss that made me say something that I absolutely would have hated to say 4 years ago. Is Mac Jones kinda good? This game featured an awful lot of passing. Each team had pretty much identical offensive production, but the main difference was the 2 fumbles by the Rams. If only one of those fumbles didn't happen within arm's reach of the goal line, Kyren Williams even had a chance to redeem himself at the end of the game in the 49ers red zone, and he was that close. But like I've said before, close only counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and guys who totally could have gotten laid that one time. This was not a fun ending for this team, and it was a rough divisional home loss. But every cloud has a silver lining. You're facing the Ravens this week. Puka, if you're watching this, and I bet you are, go nuts against these morons this week. At number 16, the Cleveland Browns. It's now Dylan Gabriel's time to shine, and he did all right. He threw 2 touchdowns, no picks, and let Quinshon Judkins gash the Vikings defense like it was a girl he was with in Fort Lauderdale. Unfortunately for Cleveland, they squandered all the opportunities the Vikings gave them, particularly in the fourth quarter. Minnesota had a fumble by Xavier Scott, and then Will Reichert had such a bad field goal miss, league officials literally had to make a statement saying it didn't hit anything. How did Cleveland's fourth quarter go? 4 punts, 3 of which happened after 3-and-out drives. Carson Wentz then drove down the field and did what he couldn't do against the Steelers: implement a clutch, game-winning drive. The saving grace for Browns fans, though? The final tackle of the game was made by a guy who went to Ohio State. So at least one of the players from their dumb teams did well. Now come back to the Buckeye State and make sure Joe Flacco can sling it with the good guys. At number 15, the Seattle Seahawks. This game was a really fun instant classic unless you're Jalen Milroe. Mike McDonald brought him in to attempt some on the Bucs, and instead the pitchback had a mind of its own and ended up on the ground and in the hands of Tyke Smith. Though even with his game-sealing interception, you have to be optimistic if you're a Seahawks fan about Sam Darnold. He had 341 passing yards and found the end zone 4 times against the Bucs, 2 of which were to AJ Barner. He's been everything the Seahawks could have hoped for, even with the bad pass when it mattered most. This is still a good team, and Sam Darnold is a good quarterback who just happened to lose to another good quarterback. At least Browns and Jets fans came together and hate-watched this game. Now, before I go any further, if you like what we've seen so far, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. I do plenty of comedic shorts, plenty of long-form content, and I'm a genuinely fun guy. Come hang out with us. I'm excited to see what the future holds. And now, back to the video. At number 14, the Dallas Cowboys. I know Cowboys fans might come in and glaze their quarterback and say, "We won it, we them boys," but who cares? It's the Jets. But if you want to come in and leave a comment about how wrong I am, by all means. It helps the algorithm. Something called a Ryan Flournoy topped the century mark in receiving yards, so good for him, I guess. Javonte Williams and Jake Ferguson both heard me call them mid in the offseason and have continued to play out of spite. In the fourth quarter, though, the Cowboys defense reverted back to its normal self, as 4 players caught passes from Justin Fields in the end zone. I know 2 of those were on 2-point conversions, but damn it, let me have this. So get your hopes up, Cowboys fans. You won, and the Eagles lost. Nothing better, right? Right. At number 13, the Minnesota Vikings. When I said that Kevin O'Connell was the quarterback whisperer, who knew that list included Cam Akers? He threw a 32-yard touchdown to Josh Oliver, which caught the Browns completely off guard, as they're not used to practicing with a player who can complete passes. Carson Wentz was about as good of a game manager as he could have been, as he completed 26 of 35 passes, and found Jordan Addison in the end zone for, and get this, a game-winning touchdown. They almost allowed the Browns to come back at the very end of the game, but Jeff Okudah was on the field, I'm assuming by accident, and he made a game-saving tackle on Jamari Thrash to end the game. They now have a .500 record in Europe this year, and they needed this week to get back on their feet after losing to the Steelers last week. Dicks. At number 12, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bucs are just straight up good at football. Granted, they needed Jalen Milroe to flip the ball to the wrong guy, but it worked out for them. Good for them. They're very hurt, but they did pull off a phenomenal win. I mean, they got speckle-dorked by Sam Darnold until the very last pass of the game by him, where he threw it right to Levante David. Elsewhere, Emeka Ibuka showed people that you don't need to pronounce the G in his name because he already is one. Baker Mayfield continued to be solid when he needs to be, and Rachaad White found the end zone twice in the absence of Bucky Irving. A win like that, especially when the second place team is on bye and the rest of the division sucks ass, is great, especially when the defense barely touches Sam Darnold all game. At number 11, the Carolina Panthers. All Rico Dowdle needed to do to experience a career revival was go to the Carolina Panthers. All Rico Dowdle needed to do to experience a career revival was face the Miami Dolphins defense. He had 234 yards from scrimmage, which is the most any NFL player has had all season. No Chuba, no problem. Especially when they're facing a 17-0 deficit in the second quarter and come back to win. This is a team that badly needs a reason to feel optimistic. Bryce Young and co. didn't give up for a second. Not to mention they might be getting Jalen Coker back soon, which I think is important for them. But most importantly, Panthers Nation, listen up, Cat Bros. His name is Teteroa McMillan. He's good at wide receiver. Get him the football. A lot. I don't want the $25 I spent on a fantasy league to go to waste. At number 10, the New Orleans Saints. This was a game that featured 2 pretty bad football teams, and somebody had to not lose. And the Saints didn't lose. The Saints forced 5 turnovers, 2 of which were picks by the Kool-Aid Man. In turn, Kool-Aid Man was the NFC Defensive Player of the Week. Here's a wild stat for you. Of the Saints' 2 touchdowns on Sunday, the shortest of them was for 86 yards. That's because the other one was an 87-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed that took a simple flick at a wrist. Both Spencer Rattler and Kellen Moore can now say they've won a game in the NFL, even though it took a comical amount of errors by the Giants to make it happen. It just sucks that the only team in this division to not win was on bye, though their kicker did miss 2 field goals, and I really think the Saints need to have a group meeting. What are you gonna do, fire me from my own channel? Don't control me. At number 9, the Washington Commanders. There is nothing more fun than watching Bill Krosky-Mara's inner child come out when he realizes that he gets to talk to Tom Brady. When that inner child came out, by force of habit, Tom Brady tried to kiss him on the lips. Bill's big day saw him notch 150 all-purpose yards on 16 touches. Elsewhere, Deebo Samuel took all those off-season fat jokes y'all made personally and had 4 times as many receptions as any other Commanders player had targets. Washington also did a great job at getting to Justin Herbert, as they had 4 sacks on him and 1 more on Trey Lance. Now that they firmly have an RB1 in their backfield and Jaden Daniels is healthy again, vibes are really good in Washington, at least some of them. At number 8, the San Francisco 49ers. Is Mac Jones good? It sure feels like it, as he topped 300 yards against a Ram team that was looking like one of the better teams in the NFC. And he did so without any of his top 4 passing targets who also don't play running back. Mac Jones also reportedly ate 11 bananas during the game, which sounds like a good idea until you realize all the 49ers players keep getting hurt by slipping on the peels. Even with the injury bug wiping its ass all over this roster, Christian McCaffrey is somehow the one that keeps avoiding getting hurt. He's been very productive, like crazy productive. I mean, it's not unusual to see McCaffrey productive, but it is crazy to see him be super productive without him getting hurt by the slightest gust of wind. Wait, they played in a dome. Okay. They made clutch plays on Kyren Williams when they needed to most, and it was a great road divisional win by a resilient 49ers team. At number 7, the Tennessee Titans. The winner of this week's "Yay, you gotta win" award goes to the Titans, who needed the funniest sequence of events in the world to make it happen. It's wild that Brian Callahan's hot seat was briefly doused by his own tears of laughter. This was the hardest team to rank this week. They got their first win. Cam Ward got his first win. Brian Callahan got what seems like his first win. Calvin Ridley had one of the 3 good games he's allowed to have in a given year. And Jeffrey Simmons continued to show people that he's absolutely impeccable at his job. They did lose Arden Key, though, to a thigh injury. He might not play this week, though T'Vondre Sweat might be coming back soon, so vibes are good there. I don't know how long the good vibes will last, just be thankful you won a game. Vibes are good for the Titans right now. Just make Geno Smith look like shit this week, please. If you can make Kyler Murray look like shit, you guys could do wonders against that offense. And speaking of teams who won in the funniest way possible, at number 6, the Jacksonville Jaguars. On what was one of the funniest game-winning touchdowns of my lifetime, Trevor Lawrence slipped on all of Mac Jones's banana peels, slipped again, and walked in for 6. He's just lucky that Chris Jones honored the fact that it was a night game by grabbing himself where the sun don't shine. You know what defensive player didn't grab his nuts on a goal line play? Devin Lloyd, who had a 99-yard pick 6 on Patrick Mahomes. He physically could not grab his nuts though, as they were entirely too big. You know who could grab balls with the best of them though? Travis Hunter. What a catch. Winning a major home primetime game against an alleged dynasty is about as awesome as it can get. Duval. At number 5, the Detroit Lions. It's not fun to walk out of my home stadium to chants of Jared Goff. Honestly, I'm glad I didn't turn around to them and shout, "System QB!" The Lions are legitimately good, but the Bengals are legitimately bad, though there were some flub-ups by the Lions in this game. This offensive line didn't have to deal with Shamar Stewart, who is good, and they still gave up 4 sacks. This team went up huge, thanks to some Jake Browning passes that had no business entering the universe, and then all of a sudden he found his big boy pants and they struggled to stop him. Though the end of game safety on him did help. The offense? Well, the stadium broke out into Jared Goff chants for a reason. He only had to complete 19 passes to get 258 yards. David Montgomery got to run one in and throw one in to Brock Wright, who seems to only catch passes on trick plays. Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta were heavy contributors. Isaac Tesla did his normal game routine of brushing his hair for the first 3 quarters and catching a cool-ass 4th quarter touchdown. And David Montgomery's sister got to watch it all play out in person. For my team, the loss sucked, but that was cool. At number 4, the Houston Texans. This is a team that badly needed to get on track, and boy did they. Granted, it was against a Baltimore team that's absolutely dog shit, right now, but the Texans showed they can manage a game and win. This was a true team effort where everyone had solid contributions, except Woody Marks, who I was told would be dominating touches. CJ Stroud was remarkably efficient. Cooper Rush, meanwhile, played like he was in a sperm bank as all of his shots landed in a petri dish. What? Okay, fine, Kamari Lassiter got one too. The Texans didn't have a non-scoring drive until midway through the fourth quarter. In a division that is somehow better than I anticipated, this team is good once again. This team is back up there after starting at a despondent 0-3. Just get Woody Marks the ball, will ya? At number 3, the Indianapolis Colts. At least someone in Indy had a good weekend. The Colts absolutely dominated a Raiders team that left Indy with a bigger blemish on its record than Mark Sanchez did. The Raiders let the Colts ground game find the end zone so many times, they let Amir Abdullah score once, I'm assuming on accident. Though this game did have its normal helping of the J.T. Kidd, as he scored 3 touchdowns. The Colts dominated so much, they even let Anthony Richardson into the game. He took all of those "is he gonna tap out" comments personally and completed his one pass of the day to himself. In 2025, Anthony Richardson is his own leading receiver. I don't know if this week was about Indianapolis being legitimately good or the Raiders being truly cheeks, but either way, this is one of those you love to see at games. At number 2, the Denver Broncos. What a comeback by the boys from Mile High. They were down 17-3 going into the fourth quarter, and then Bosif Nixon put on his big boy pants and his Magnum condoms and led the Broncos on 3 scoring drives in the fourth quarter. The second drive is the big story here though. Thanks to chunk plays, a pass interference call, and Evan Ingram's 11-yard touchdown, they were within a PAT of tying it. However, Sean Payton used his own Magnum condom energy and went for the 2-point conversion, and they got it! They sealed the deal with a field goal and gained an entire game on the AFC West, despite the fact that they played an undefeated team on the road. Vibes are great in Denver, but you know whose vibes are absolutely impeccable? At number 1, the New England Patriots. Which quarterback do you think has positive things to say about Sunday? Josh doesn't, but Drake may. This was easily the biggest win of the week. Stephon Diggs was masterful. Drake May showed off his horse of a throwing arm on a national stage, and Andres Borregales channeled his inner "I guess we're going to the AFC Championship game" energy and nailing a 52-yard game-winning field goal right down Broadway. This was arguably the biggest win for the Patriots in the 2020s. We're far enough removed from the Brady-Belichick era of the Patriots that I can stomach the Patriots being a playoff team again. They're insanely likable and vibes are great in New England. Mr. Kraft has to be thrilled. And that's all I got for this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for super sexy sports content, and stay tuned for more sports content that you didn't ask for.